My name is Mary Rocke, and I've had my children kidnapped and endangered by Child Protective Services caseworker Morena Chapman. Ms. Chapman came to my home on April 1st of 2008, complete with the Roseville law enforcement at 17:30, that's 5:30 p.m., and performed an emergency removal without the required Form JC-05B that is required to be signed by a judge or a magistrate, therefore making her actions kidnapping, as she had no legal authorization to take my children from my custody. The police report clearly states this caseworker initiated the call to the police department at 5:24 p.m., and they met her at my home to assist her. The form could not have been present as required by law, as a signed form of JC-05B did not exist on April 1st of 2008. Form JC-05B was signed April 2nd of 2008. The courts cannot argue with the fact of the timeline. I was then court-ordered out of my own home based on mental health problems of the mother with a 24-hour notice, when the CPS caseworker came whining to the court that the mother was unstable because I confronted her about placing my two children with the biological father, who, unbeknownst to me when I met and married him, had failed to disclose the fact that he had been institutionalized at the age of 14 by his own family at a place called Glen Eden Psychiatric Hospital, and has been diagnosed something called manic depression and bipolar. And he refuses to take the proper medications to treat this volatile condition, and he has attacked both me and my children. CPS not only insisted on this being a safe environment for my children, they gave him written permission to physically take my children from my custody and leave my home after failing to test him in a timely manner for the marijuana he is attempting to use in lieu of the proper medications, which may have been the cause of my son acting out from all the stress of the ongoing manic episodes of the father. CPS is also claiming anger management classes is the proper approach to protect my children from the ongoing attacks during the manic episodes that keep occurring in my home that my children to this day have had to endure. The juvenile court referee that heard the case ruled in such an arbitrary manner, it is a complete disgrace to the robe, as he had no medical documentation on which he could even begin to substantiate this reasoning and even remotely justify the basis, terms, and conditions that he court-ordered me out of my own home. In fact, I had been tested by a doctor of the CPS's own choice on April 1st of 2008, and his report shows no signs of mental illness, which show a huge amount of error given all the evidence that has subsequently presented itself in court, which continues to point towards fraud upon the court by this group. I have had an elected official fondly reminisce right on the record about her own illegal drug use while in her pursuit of her lawyer's license that allows her to practice the law in her continuing capacity that she herself was breaking with no remorse. The referee proclaimed right in my face that he felt his job was to frighten me. My children have been living a lie for 4 years. My son has continued to report the abusive behavior by the father, and the system insists that it's in his best interest to allow him to be battered. The court has not only refused to address this issue, but has rewarded the abuser of my children financially, and now he has the ability to self-medicate with marijuana instead of properly treating the volatile illness due to the intentional disregard to the fact that Morena Chapman's failure to test him in a timely manner for the illegal drugs by simply not disclosing the facts to whichever doctor he has duped into giving him a medical marijuana card that he can hide behind, as I'm sure no medical professional would knowingly endanger anyone, least of all children, as their oath is to preserve life. Now my children have had to barricade themselves in a vehicle to keep from being attacked, and my neighbors are sleeping with guns under their pillows because of the negligence of this select group who are being allowed to continue to take taxpayers' money with the promise to protect the innocent and trying to hide behind this immunity thing, but fail to understand that I am aware of the basic principle of law. I had filed for divorce and had filed a motion to have the father removed from the home for the safety of not only my children, but society as a whole. This motion just kind of mysteriously fell off the judge's docket, and there is a $20,000 of my children's college funds that are missing in action. My case involves off-the-record meetings, the proof of the court rules being ignored, and my counsel being threatened right on the record with imminent harm for attempting to do his job. Well, first of all, Protective Services, right from the get, they came to my home February 4th of 2008, and from what I can see, they are claiming that they didn't get made aware of the situation until right around the 21st of February. They came to my home when my son went to school and said, "The arguing in my home is so bad I feel like killing myself." CPS came to my door that day, knocked on my door, and told me that I needed to take my child in for a psychological evaluation for suicidal ideations, and I did. What mother wants to put their kid in the ground? Not me. At that point, I told them what we argued about. What we argued about was drugs. The father didn't want to put them down, and I've told them that on February 4th. They failed to test him for weeks. Morena Chapman, the drug test will show that it didn't get administered until like around the 21st, I believe, somewhere like about 3 weeks later. I personally witnessed this man running back and forth to and from Rite Aid and GNC and getting drug cleansers and stuff, you know, little drug tests in the garage and stuff. Anyway, she didn't call to have him tested right away. After that, I had filed for a divorce. I had filed on February 14th. He was served the papers for divorce. When we finally did meet with Morena, I had been calling her repeatedly on the phone, and she did not return my phone calls. When she finally did get a hold of me, she told me parenting classes. There was an interaction between my child and myself. I do want to make this quite clear. When they came to my home February 4th, my son apparently had been interviewed at the school because they made him, or he had made them aware that I had physically reprimanded my child, Melanie. Apparently he had been asked that if he had ever been physically reprimanded, and he said yes. And yes, I did tell them about my daughter. They questioned me about slapping my daughter. And I told them exactly what I just told you. I don't know if you would like me to repeat what happened, actually on video. The circumstances were that I slapped her once. And the CPS caseworker went into the court system, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and then told this referee that I admitted to repeatedly slapping my children multiple times, several times. She told this referee that I admitted to slapping my children every time I got upset. That would be perjury. I begged to over $100,000 for a trial in front of a jury of my peers. I was denied that. I had a judge, Tracy Yokich, break the Michigan court rules and force a divorce trial in lieu of a trial in front of a jury of my peers. It doesn't matter that it does specifically say in the Michigan court rule book that when it comes to trials, a criminal case is to take precedence over a civil matter. She decides to make up the rules as she goes. She pays no attention to the rules that she's being paid to run the court system according to. Going back to what happened after Morena Chapman kidnapped my kids, some time had passed. I had filed a motion to have this man removed from my home because I had went to my local law enforcement department and I said, "Get him out of here." They said, "We can't make him leave without a judge's authorization. His name's on the house." I said, "Okay." So I went to my lawyer and I said, "Get him out of here." He had filed a motion. My lawyer, my first lawyer, Louis Zayden, had filed a motion to have Dale removed from the home. Dale got hit with this motion and ran down to CPS and went, "I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing anything." What he's not doing is he's not taking his medication, okay? This woman came to my home, did an emergency removal on my children. on April 1st, right after I had seen Dr. Patrick Ryan. She pulled me in front of the court, in front of this referee Kennedy, John Kennedy. My attorney, I had called my original attorney. After she did that emergency removal, I had called him all night long, couldn't get a hold of him. I called everybody in the phone book. There was a Christopher Aiello who called me back. He asked me to meet him in his office that day. The day of I was told that I needed to be in front of referee Kennedy the very next day. I didn't want to appear without counsel. I met him. This man charged me $15,000 to represent me and represented me with a 15-minute consultation. He went in front of referee Kennedy. Referee Kennedy asked if I would like a reading of the formal complaint. My attorney asked 6 times right on the record. Yes, I've got the transcripts. Yes, 6 times he asked. Referee Kennedy then threatened my counsel right on the record. He said, "You'll waive the formal reading if you don't want to get on my bad side." Yeah, I'm quite sure I had a right to that. I was sitting there like a sitting duck for the whole time. The only thing I was asked in that emergency removal hearing was my name and my relationship to my children. The only thing that I was allowed to say was, "My name is Mary Rocke and I'm the mother." The Michigan Court Rule Book clearly states that during those emergency removals, you are supposed to be allowed to say why the children should be returned to you. I was never given that opportunity. Based on my 2 statements and Morena Chapman's testimony, referee Kennedy put on the record that there were mental health problems of the mother. She also went ahead and testified that, oh yes, the father came up clean on the drug use. Oh, he took a test and he didn't, it came back negative. She didn't tell anybody that she had not tested him in a timely manner for the drugs. I went home, I packed what I could in my 93 Jeep Grand Cherokee, which equates to 5 pairs of pants, 5 shirts, a 93 Jeep Grand Cherokee, a few papers, a small camera, a coffee pot, and an alarm clock, and I left my home because I was court ordered out of my own house. I didn't want to go to jail. I was told by my attorney that I would be in front of this judge within 30 days. I said, okay. So I went to stay. I put myself up in a hotel room. And I was told that the judge had decided she was going to hold some form of hearing. The court date that I had paid for to have him removed from the home, I'm a little confused. It came and went. It was never on the docket. It just kind of mysteriously fell off. But when the very first time I did stand in front of this judge, I stood in front of her crying. And she looked down her nose at me and proclaimed that my children were safe after I've already cleaned the blood off my kids. My oldest child went to her 8th grade graduation with 2 black eyes because of this man. After he battered my child, he went to go seek mental help. He was told to get back on his medication and he won't go. My kids now run from me and cry. They're being told I'm something called schizophrenic. This is a nightmare. I would like that woman brought to justice. I would like due process. I was forced through a divorce trial after they left my kids sitting there for 6 months while Dale was telling them that I was something called schizophrenic. Then they turned around and asked where my kids wanted to live. I knew that the very first day of visitation, I've been away from my children for 4 years. April 1st of 2008, I have seen my children at visitation. And about maybe, 3-4 weeks after that, I've had my visitation suspended. Although I have been court ordered, if I wanted to see my kids, that I'm to be supervised by this man. I don't believe anybody in their right mind would agree to be supervised by a guy who's done time in a mental institution, who's not on his medication and on drugs. He split my face open, battered me. He's put his head through the walls of my home. He's taken out entire walls of drywall in my house. My son had reported to them that while I was out working a full-time job, that he had been grabbed by his ankle, dragged through the house, and had his head bounced off a porcelain toilet. CPS, this Morena Chapman, explained this to this referee as, he is just trying to get him ready to go to school, Your Honor. Since when is bouncing a kid's head off a porcelain toilet protocol for getting him ready to go to school? I thought it was getting them up, getting them dressed, making sure they were fed, had their lunch money, clean clothes, homework on time if they weren't feeling good. You know, they take them to the doctors. No wonder they took the kids from me. Yeah.
I'd like to know how Morena Chapman, she's CPS, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you could, in your view, how does it look like the court is allowing CPS to manipulate the system outside of the attorneys, how the attorneys are actually supposed to be the ones that are moving the court? It's appearing that prejudicially, and I've heard some stories about Chapman that she's a lot prejudiced against women and not the men, or favorable to men, because at some point in her past history that she had she received some repercussion of having treated a man in the wrong way, and so now she's kind of gone to the other extreme. I don't know if you've heard anything about that or not. That's a story that I heard.
I have heard. I believe you may be referring to Tracy Jokic.
Yes.
Not Morena Chapman.
Right.
Yes.
And also, how old are your kids too?
My kids now, my daughter's 27, and I have an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old. I have 3 children. Well, the first attorney didn't call me back, and I do have, when I met with Christopher Aiello the next morning, he had me sign to have not only him represent me, but a Giuseppe Biondo. I had 2 attorneys. I was paying for 2 attorneys, and I paid them to represent me because my state, going against the state, Morena Chapman, she claimed it was abuse. There's case law backing my behavior with my children, by the way. I just thought I might point that out. People versus Green. I'm a little confused because I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. I work a full-time work week, and I go to church on Sundays. Why don't I have my children? Oh, the reason that Tracy Jokic gave for me not having custody of my children after I was forced to go through a divorce trial in lieu of a trial in front of a jury of my peers is she stated right on the record that the reasoning was because I didn't have a home to put them in. See, I went to stay in a hotel for 30 days to go in front of her and appear in front of her. When I got in front of her, my counsel, Giuseppe Biondo, put right on the record that my counsel was under the impression that we were going to address the motion to have Dale removed from the home. No, she made up a motion of her own. The only thing that this judge wanted to know is, do I want to be supervised by a corrupt CPS caseworker, or do I want to be supervised by a guy who did time in a mental institution who's not on his medication and on drugs? That's like the bully in high school that comes up and grabs those little hairs on the back of your neck and says, do you want 1 up or 2 down? I'm standing there, and then she started asking him if he wanted to supervise me. By the way, the man's told me if I'm ever with anybody else, he's going to kill them. He's going to cut them up and make me watch by sticking toothpicks in my eyelids. No, I'm not going to be supervised by that. I've been told by the mental health professionals to stay away from him. I've been told by the local law enforcement to stay away from him. And I've been told by the domestic violence shelters. I've been in and out of Turning Point and Carolyn's Place, all while waiting for due process that I hear does exist in the court system somewhere. I've been told to stay away from him. I've been told by this judge that he gets to supervise me. By the way, the first psychiatric evaluation by Dr. Patrick Ryan did say that I was odd, offsetting, peculiar, and eccentric. 6 months later, I was court ordered to go in front of the court psychologist. That man just deemed I was odd and peculiar. And I'm starting to laugh. Christians were very peculiar people. It's in the book. Basically what happened in Roseville, Michigan, in Macomb County is, yeah, I was court ordered out of my house for setting foot in a church.
We are seeing some patterns here where the court is trying to utilize county people so that they can spread the wealth, so to speak. And so right now we've got a CPS worker, we've got a court psychologist. Did you see other people that were involved?
Oh, gosh, yes. I'll tell you what, this is where they really stuck their foot in it because I've been court ordered to go see a licensed psychiatrist and get on whatever medications that they feel I need to be on. By the way, I have been diagnosed with anxiety, okay? Yeah. I go to see the psychiatrist. The psychiatrists are going, excuse us, let us get this straight. They want us to stick you on drugs because he won't take his medication. No, we can't do that. That's not ethical. We could be sued. We could have our license revoked. We could be thrown in prison. They want us to stick you on drugs so you stick yourself in physical harm's way? No. So they go and they put it in writing for me. I went and I picked up, I went in, I needed a psychological evaluation. I told them what was going on. I go in front of this Judge Jokic and I said, Your Honor, I've been to see the psychiatrist. She said, You have? And I said, Yes, I have. She said, Did you get a report? Yep, absolutely. She said, Can I see it? Sure, no problem. Her courtroom is videoed. I have her right on video, handing her the report, which clearly states in the report that I don't need to be on any medication. I got her flipping back and forth through this thing. She hands it back to me, and in a subsequent meeting, she looks right at me and goes, Are you on your medication? I looked at her, and I'm thinking, you don't even read what's presented to you? Why that comment, that question would have never came out of her mouth. That's proof she doesn't even do her job. I turned around, I looked at her, I went, medication? This is what I'm up against. I really want to go home, but I can't. I don't know what the first report said from Dr. Patrick Ryan. It's locked up by something called the HIPAA law, I think it's called, okay? I do know what the, pardon?
That the report on your husband?
Oh, yes. The reason we went to go see Dr. Patrick Ryan to begin with is because I looked at her and I said, There's something wrong with him here. I couldn't remember what it was called. She looked at me and she said, How about if I send him for a psych evaluation? I said, Fine, do so. She goes, How about if you all go for a psych evaluation? I said, Fine, you want in my head? Come on in. I never had one before. I don't know what the first report said about him, but I do know what the second one said about him. Go ahead, ask me what it said. You guys will like this. I mean, it's... All right. It said he was sociopathic in behavior towards me. I didn't even know what that word meant. I was reading the report right in front of a mental health professional. I'm like, Geez, doc, that's a really large word. What does that mean? The doctor looked right at me and went, Charles Manson. I'm going, oh, nice. And you guys go, Here, take the kids. Children live what they learn, and I'm kind of wondering what the government wants for society. They don't listen to what comes out of the parent's mouth. They watch what the parents do, and they repeat the behaviors. By the way, this man has also been busted by the local law enforcement stalking me. I've got Eric Smith's office, the prosecuting attorney, going, Sweep this under the carpet. Oh, yeah, they don't want anybody to know what happened.
Let me ask you this. What do you see as the resolve? Do you think there will ever be a resolve? Do you think you'll ever have a family back? Do you think you'll have relationships with your children back? And what do you hope for the movie Lawless America? What do you think that you'd like to see out of that in your testimony?
I'd like to see my children have the truth revealed to them. Because my very first visitation with my children, this is before any of the doctor's reports came out, my daughter was very disrespectful to me, and my son stuck up for me right there at the visitation. By the way, the visitations that were supposed to last an hour were only lasting 5 minutes because the kids were being told that I was sick, and I know this because the very first visitation, my daughter went, nah, 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 at me like she usually does because the biological father condones that. He's sick, okay? My son turned on her and said, Don't talk to her like that, Melanie, you know she's sick, and ran from the room crying. I just looked at him and I thought, I am? That was before the reports came out. When I looked at the reports, I'm like, really? I have mental health problems no doctor can seem to find. They say there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with the court system.
How can the movie
reveal to Congress that I would like, Congress and the representatives, I would like these people to be stripped of the immunity. I would like them to not have any immunity. I would like them to be held accountable for what they've done. I would like them to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for perjury and kidnapping. They are felonies punishable by prison time. I would like the referee and the judge to be included in this. I've had my basic human rights violated. I'd like to go home, but I can't. There's a sociopath in my house that I asked the government to get rid of. No, I am a survivor. The victims are the ones that are in the caskets. There's people who have killed themselves over this. There was a woman in my area right around the same time that this happened. A Jennifer Klukla. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know anything about her. She was mentally ill. She went through her house. She killed her children and her animals. This woman used the fact that my child, Melanie, misunderstood the knife that was under my mattress for protection, as I'm legally allowed to have one under my mattress. I don't have a gun. I don't have a gun permit. I can't break man's laws. I had a knife for my protection and my children's protection under my mattress because this man was threatening to kill me for leaving him. Melanie made a comment. This comment came from my 14-year-old child, Melanie, who saw me start to attend Christian church. I went to a Christian church. I went to a church ladies meeting. That's all I did, and I got thrown out of my house. Melanie made a comment that she was afraid God was going to tell me to kill the family because he searched the room, he found the knife, he told the kids about the knife, but he didn't tell them what he was doing to me when they weren't looking. And being in the middle of a contentious divorce, you're not supposed to say anything that makes dad, quote unquote, look bad. This comment, the CPS caseworker used to cause a very panic. What she did was the equivalent of screaming fire in a theater and pointed at me. And that guy's over there with a Zippo on high flame. That woman needs to be prosecuted and put in prison. She was laughing behind closed doors. I filed a formal complaint against her with not only her boss, Mr. Starling, but her boss's boss, Miss Mahoney, about the perjury. And she's behind closed doors during one of the visitations, laughing and flirting with Mr. Starling, going, oh, she's trying to get me on that perjury thing. That's not funny after I've cleaned the blood off my kids.